Hi everyone, my name is Nokolo,
And I'm Bonolo.
and we are just two South African girls who decided to take our favorite reviews out of the group chat and into the world of social media to share with you.
100%. And welcome to Did You See That? Welcome back, everybody. For all our new followers, thank you so much for following the page. Just a reminder, if you can please also, after you've seen the funky TikTok short, to please go over on YouTube, subscribe to our channel at Did You See That Pod.
Awesome, and you can also find the link in our bio.
Yeah, 100%.
Great. So today we are really excited because we are to be reviewing. We are going to be reviewing season 2 of Squid Games. So, just a recap in terms of what Squid Games is about. So, we begin season 2 of Squid Games with the main character of the show, Gi-hun.
Gi-hun. I'm joking. I don't know if that's how you. Gi-hun. We're just gonna stick with Gi-hun.
Yes. Having have made the decision after season 1 to actually return to the games, and part of his realization is that, or reason rather, is that he wants to return to the games to essentially one end the games. And also, I think at the end of the season, of season 1, it really left him quite scarred and emotionally broken from what he had witnessed. And so part of his motivation is wanting to essentially free people from having to experience what he went through. And so he asks the front man to put him back into the game because he wants to participate, but mainly with the intention of ending the games. So that's essentially the plot. And I think what we were talking about as well was that in this season, what we really enjoyed is that they gave a backstory to the stories of the characters.
100%.
In a way that we didn't see as much in season 1, which also meant that the first 2 seasons might have felt like a little bit of a drag. But it ultimately, you see that like it was building into the storyline and who each of the characters are as well.
Definitely. I really enjoyed that because, like you're saying, in the first season, it starts off and we are already in this game. I mean, we do have a little bit of context in terms of Gi-hun's character, but in this particular season, I really enjoyed how they took time to like flesh out everybody's backstory.
Agreed.
And also it gives you sort of insight into what would make a person decide to be part of something like this, right? Like, yes, of course, like a lot of them don't really know like the depths of it and stuff. They think that they're just going to go there and play games and win money.
Agreed.
And I wonder if they knew whether they would still decide to go in, you know. But I definitely did enjoy. I know people said, or there've been a lot of like insights about how they feel like it dragged, and you know, and it definitely did start off as a slow burn.
Agreed.
But I enjoyed that they took time to do that. Also, I think because we had seen what we had seen in season 1, it was going to be very difficult to just start smack bam in the middle of the game. Like it was going to be like, okay, and now you're watching 7 episodes of just like people dying. Like so happy with that.
So I think for us, in this review, we've really kind of structured it in a way where we were drawing parallels more than anything to the reality that we live in and the worlds that we live in, and also some of the complex choices that the characters make that show you, I guess, the flawed character of human nature, the illusion of choice, and also we also were exploring just, you know, the role of the front man, having have been player number 1 himself, and what that looked like in essence. So I guess to start off, I think for us, what we were really kind of like talking about was the core concept of, in the games, the concept of democracy, that everyone gets to vote, a majority rule, and also how that is actually an illusion. And
we're not anarchists,
we're
by
not.
the way.
We're not.
But it was interesting in terms of how after every game people were given the choice to decide whether they want to continue playing the games, even though they've seen that, like, if you play the game and you screw up, you die, basically. And it was just interesting how even in terms of voting for whether you continue with the games and like majority rules, first of all, it was interesting how individual choice surpassed majority choice, and also how a lot of the individual choices ended up making the majority choice, and how even though the majority choice was not necessarily the best choice, right? Which is quite interesting in terms of how it mirrors just the world, really, you know, like voting, all of these things, you're given the assumption or the illusion that like you have a choice in this thing.
Yeah.
But then you realize, do I?
I think it also speaks to the fact that humans are inherently self-serving, and so they'll always prioritize their own interests. And you could see how you know, some of the players were saying, let's just play one more game. And after we play
and like the money that's there is not enough to cover my interest.
How do you know you're gonna survive one more game?
It was like both of you to assume that you're gonna survive.
And you see how it also breaks some of the characters because they lose some of the people that they got to know because they wanted to play one more game.
Yo, my fed to money.
It's dangerous because they wanted to play one more game. And so you kind of see where, you know, some people are saying half of the group or almost half of the group wants to now go home. They've realized the effects of the game. And the other half of the group doesn't want to go home because they just want to reach the level at which they have enough money to settle their debts. But I think what was interesting for me in those decisions was that Gi-hun, as you could constantly see that every time people were saying, let's play one more game, he was slowly realizing, one, the fact that humans are self-serving, that even though he has told people that, you know, people will die,
even though they've seen that
they still want to continue the game, and he's quite frustrated by it. But I think what I noticed was that what he maybe failed to kind of understand is that compared to the other players, he has the benefit of having played the game before.
100%.
So he
has money.
Yeah.
Like he won the previous game. Do you understand?
He is a rich
funny,
man.
Actually, because
he is a rich man.
It kind of reminds me of, like, you know how like a lot of the times in our modern world, like people constantly villainize billionaires and like all of these things, and it sometimes makes you wonder, like, if you were in this position, if capitalism worked for you to the point where you are now a billionaire, would you want to dismantle it? And chances are probably not, because it's worked for you. Right? And I think what's interesting about Squid Games is that you start to see that from a human nature. Not everybody is Gi-hun. Like not everyone is going to make that decision to be like, actually,
we're fighting for the greater good.
We're fighting for the greater good.
My personal decisions, you know, don't override the benefits towards society. So I think that was interesting because he, you know, he's played the game, he's traumatized by the game, and so he is struggling to understand why people are making the decision to stay. But I think the lesson in that, and kind of like what it shows you, is that all of those people and all of us are actually subject to the conditions of capitalism.
100%.
And we're subject to like the ideals. The characters are subject to the ideals of, you know, being individual, their own self-serving choices that they would need to make, irrespective of whether or not it would harm the next person. You do see glimpses of that, or even themselves. You do see glimpses of it, but those are kind of like the overriding themes. And so when I watched it, I was just like, all of these people are just victims of a system
100%.
that has put them in a position where they need to think from a point of survival.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's kind of, I mean, I found myself like watching and also just rolling my eyes at like, come on, guys, you've seen this. Like, just vote to leave, right? But then it got me thinking, like, if I was in a dire situation,
mm-hmm.
and I'm being told that there's an opportunity to play a couple of games, play a couple of childhood games, and you could win like billions. And I mean, some of the backstories with these characters is like, for example, player one, even though he is the front man, he comes up with the whole story about how his wife needs a transplant or something like that. There's another one
whose daughter is terminally ill,
and so he needs this money for
she has
treatment.
blood cancer, so she needs it
exactly.
for that.
There's another one who wants to do gender affirming surgery as well. So it's like really big life altering decisions. And sometimes I wonder, like, if I was in a position where, you know, I had to make a big decision because a loved one is ill and I don't have the money and all I have to do is play a couple of games, like,
we would just hope the couple of games don't mean you die.
Exactly. Exactly. And like my thing is like every time people would vote to stay, I'm just like, brother. But then at the same time, I'm like, if I was in that position, I don't.
Just also the belief that they had that they have one more game.
Exactly.
And just leaving it to fate.
Exactly.
That they have one more game when they actually did not have one more game. The other thing that I found interesting that I wanted to explore is the front man.
Sure.
And how he ends up becoming player number one.
So I'll be honest with you. In my mind, I kept being like, Gi-hun, the first season, player number one was the guy. Why are you not making this linkage? Like, I was like, and you know, there were glimpses of it. There were glimpses of when
he could see he's kind of like suspicious of his character.
Exactly. But
and his friend as well, when he saw player number one kill someone as well. And he saw in his eyes just how vicious this person is.
And I think it speaks to also just his nature as a person, as a character, where he's the guy who always wants to assume best intention. He's the team player. He's the this, he's the this. And it's just interesting how, despite every voting situation, when he's seen that people are self-interested, he still has a assume best intention for everybody.
Yes. And I'm just but I also think I was quite annoyed that player number one was
in the game
because I kind of just thought this adds another complex layer to the fact that, you know, people are already there for their own self-serving interests. People are going to die. People think they will survive, but this is being controlled somewhere by something that's bigger than them. And then you add now that the person who is running these games has an added advantage
of being in
the game.
And that's what makes it so brilliant, right?
Where's the choice?
Exactly. And that's what makes it so brilliant, because and the game's also being used as a symbol of like living in a capitalist system, is that it's rigged. The game is ultimately rigged. And I think that's really like what was being trying to be communicated as well, that like, yes, there are people who benefit from the system being the way that it is, and they will go to the ends of the earth to try and make sure that it's still intact. And I think player one was a symbol of that.
He was a symbol of that. And I think it's also why he said to Gi-hun that the games will only change if the world changes. He knew what he was talking about. And so I think, again, he is drawing from the context and the world that we live in, that is a capitalist society. And so the games are only but a microcosm of everything that plays out in the world. And so if you want that microcosm to shift or change, you essentially need to change the very capitalist system and society that we live in, which touches on themes of like individuality versus the greater good, money versus
choice as well.
Versus a choice as well.
Yeah.
It's just tough because part of the effect of capitalism is that people are in debt, and all of these characters have some sort of kind of debt. And I was just thinking about it, and I was just like, again, you know, victims to the choices that they made under the system that they made, and so it's all or nothing for them,
exactly,
to survive.
And I think by the time that they come in there, their circumstances are so dire to the point where it's like, Joe, even if I died, at least I tried. You know what I mean? At least I tried. At least I can die knowing that I tried to make it work.
Yeah. The other thing I found interesting is that Gi-hun and some of the players, they obviously grow frustrated with him as they realize that the games being played aren't the same as what he thought
they were going to
be in season 1, which again is, you know, the illusion that you have a choice. He thought he had an advantage.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of him realizing that I'm deeper than I thought I was going to be.
And you know, that actually just like brings up a thought for me in terms of like him thinking that the games are going to be the same, which again, taking it back to like living in the system that we live in. A lot of the times, like when we were raised and stuff, it's always like, go to school, do this, get a job, do this. And it's so interesting how, again, it's like Squid Games is such a symbol and like a metaphor for like what actually happens in real life, because you grow up, you go through the system, you go to school, you do all of these things, you matriculate, you graduate,
do everything right.
You do everything right, and then you don't have a job.
Right.
And then you don't have a job. You don't, you know, and it's like the game is rigged. Like
it's rigged.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. What you thought was going to be a thing is no longer a thing.
Yeah. What you thought, and also just the fact that again, the frontman has an added advantage because he's now seen the kind of person Gi-hun is, and that Gi-hun, you know, is heavily emotional about the game because he saw everyone die in the last season, and so he tries to draw him in by telling him that story about his wife. He tries to, you know, develop the spirit of camaraderie with him.
Voting in the same way.
What
a mastermind. Also, that man is fine.
Okay. That is not... Well, he's fine. So is his brother. And again, it's the advantage that he has. I won't lie, I struggled with, I know, like we touch on it in the sense that, you know, again, it's speaking to how we think we have choice, but we don't really have choice. But I struggled a lot with him being a player. I was like, this is so unfair. Why would they do this? You know,
life is unfair by nature. And also, I think what was interesting and like just from a philosophical perspective, with him being in the game and us, or rather the players thinking that they have a choice, but actually they don't have a choice, speaks to this whole thing of like free will, and like, is free will really a thing? If things are predetermined in the way that like things were predetermined in this game by virtue of player 1 being in there, then can you really say that like people had free will and like had an ability to decide? And it goes back to the whole like illusion of choice thing, you know. So I just think it's an incredible show.
It really is. It puts all the parameters for you to think that this is a system of free will and choice. We will allow you to vote. And you will vote after every game.
You now know what you've stepped into, so you can decide if you still want to be a part of it or not. You know,
and you can leave if you want to. You don't have to leave if you don't want to. But in a similar vein, they also create conditions that are meant to reveal the human nature of people in those positions. So now when the lights go off, people are going to start killing each other because they realize that you can increase the pool of money.
And so, there can only be one winner.
And so people's choices now supersede, I'm taking someone's life, I'm killing a person. It is the more money we make, the more I can live, pay off my debts, and thrive. And thrive, I hope. I mean, I don't hope, but like that's what they think. And I think also just the whole black market thing of human organs,
them selling organs and stuff
is
again
a whole.
And I know I keep harping on about capitalism, but it's like these are the effects, like
the haves and the have-nots.
The haves and the have-nots. Like, I will go do some pretty crazy things to survive. And if putting people in a couple of games, them dying, me using their organs to then sell on the black market, like, that's what I'm gonna do.
That's what you're gonna do, right?
Also, can we talk about Thanos?
Wait, I just had a thought. I just had a thought. It's so funny how the people, the organizers of these games, right, are sitting in a position of authority and also a moral moral complex of saying, well, the games will only change if the world changes. Like, they assume a position of superiority, but it's just on the other end of that, no one is questioning you and whether or not you think that harvesting organs is
exactly.
But you have the audacity to say the games will only change if the world changes.
But yet you're out here. And that's why, like, I would be really interested, actually, for the director, if you're thinking of, do you know what I mean?
If you are
I know you guys are already in filming, but
it's already done.
Season, I really hope that in the third season we get to see the backstory of the front man, because I kept wondering, like, what is this man's incentive,
and how did he become the front man,
and
his connection with his brother.
Like, I'd really like to understand that backstory, because then I think it'll complete the show for me. And if that comes up in the third season, I'm okay with it ending at the third season. I mean, I think it should end at the third season anyway, because there's only so many seasons we can see of, like, people in pink suits killing people. But, like, I'm a very sensitive viewer. But, like, I'd really like to sort of have a conclusion on that, to understand, like, what was the thinking behind the creation of something like this as the front man, and what conditions were in place for you to think that, like, this is a good idea. Yeah,
agreed.
So would you recommend Squid Games?
I would. I actually enjoyed this season.
I also enjoyed this season. A lot of people said they didn't enjoy it.
I enjoyed this season. I think, even though the first 2 episodes, I was like, okay, when are we getting to the games?
Which is so wild, because the psychological impact that the games have, but you're like, I want to be Pagati inside.
Especially because in season 1, I was very traumatized. Like, they just throw you, they don't even give you, you just, next game 1, pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew.
And then I was just like, like, it's just so jarring.
She said pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew. Imagine. It was so jarring. And then it was so jarring. And then in season 2, it's almost like, Nox, you found it jarring in season 1. So why are you now like, but when are we getting to the game?
Exactly. There's a part of us that likes.
That's what. Maybe darkness. We're a bit. I think we're a bit desensitized as well
100%.
to things.
100%. We're very comfortable with, like, death and people dying on screen in ways that I don't think is healthy.
Definitely.
That's a separate episode.
Yeah. But I would recommend Squid Games. I Okay, so firstly, I think it's great that it's coming to an end in season 3. It's kind of bittersweet. But I think, and also we've seen this with South African like limited series or telenovelas, is that when you drag a show out to a point where it goes beyond past its prime, or when like the level of script writing, you get to a point where you're comparing and contrasting from the earlier seasons to you, it gets to a point where things become redundant and it's like where to from here, you know. So I think it's good that they're ending it like on a bang, on a high.
We hope
season 3 is on a high.
But I think the fact that they are ending it now at season 3, even when it's like the hottest thing right now,
star quality,
means that the director's a winner, and winners know when to stop.
100%. Winners know when to stop. I think definitely would recommend Squid Games also because it asks you questions about yourself of like what would you do in those situations. It touches on key themes of, you know, in the current reality and the world where people are heavily in debt, struggling to make ends meet, struggling to survive. And so from a point of desperation, what would you do in that situation? And then I guess just the broader questions through the games of the questions of fairness, equality, choice, politics,
haves and have-nots.
Fanon. You know, Fanon.
Tell me you're a politics graduate without telling me you're a politics graduate.
You know, Fanon was onto something.
Listen, if Fanon watched Squid Games, I feel like Fanon would have a lot to say about Squid Games. But
he was on the money there. Yeah. And what about you?
Yeah, look, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a thinker, and I love thinker shows. There's a little bit of politics, there's philosophy, there's the games of economics, which is my vibe. So definitely recommend it. In terms of rating, I think that the dialogue of Squid Games, man, like outside of just the cinematography and how beautiful it looks and how it's shot, the dialogue, I was like, these people wrote. Listen, they wrote. Kamsamida, they wrote.
Listen, Kamsamida.
Kamsamida's hello, though. So that's the only one. Also, have you noticed how, like, you know what? I'm not going to say, I don't want to get canceled. But, like,
okay.
But yes, I would definitely recommend it in terms of rating and, like, rating it out of 10. 10 being fantastic, 1 not being great. I'd definitely give Squid Games a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Just because the themes are well thought out, the narrative is clear, the dialogue is beautiful, it looks pretty, it's shot well. I think.
Yeah. I think I'd also give them a 10 out of 10 also because even though we knew that Gi-hun was returning to the games, we made the assumption that the games would be the same.
Yeah.
Right? And it's interesting just the roller coaster of emotions it takes you in and the different direction. The characters. And their backstories, you know, like...
Thanos was also so funny. He was comedic relief, but also irritating. But you know what I loved about him? I was like, I aim to be this unbothered.
About life.
Even when I'm facing death.
Well, he had things helping him to be unbothered.
True.
But
true. Yes. I wish that could be my natural state of being.
Got you. But yeah, the stories and the characters and, like, you know, just how unique each character's stories were. The unpredictability of the games themselves.
And also but the anxiety that comes with that.
Guys, the 5th game, was it the 5th game?
The Ringa Rosie one. The one
that had to get into yes!
Cha. And also just speaking to the front man's genius.
That's
in the last game, I mean in that game, but the last round of that game where he's like, the last number is going to be 2 or whatever the number was another way in which he was able to tap into Gi-hun's emotion.
Yes. But that's when I realized that probably that's when the characters themselves saw just how ancient everyone is.
100%.
Because you are kicking people out of rooms to be killed. You are 100%. Separating mothers and sons. You
Friend, I would have died after the first game. Like, just from the shock. Just from and we're running, and then I see people. I would have been
but
like,
you know what? After the first game, I was like, because people took instructions, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe we might actually have a shot at this.
They definitely gave us hope.
I get. I've tattoo left. All right. Facts. And then we were just like, what is going on? Yeah. So yeah. Okay, but questions. So going into the next season, the director they already have started. Obviously, Netflix has confirmed season 3.
Yeah.
Predictions are around June 2025, so not really going to wait that long.
Fantastic.
And the director has spoken about how in the next part of Squid Games, Gi-hun is going to return different to how he has been portrayed in season 1 and season 2. Any predictions of
I think Gi-hun
how his character will change?
I think in the same as like a hero's journey or whatever, there's an arc and all of these things. But I think because season 2, Gi-hun realizes the true nature of how crappy humans can be, I definitely think that he's going to get to a point where he's like, you know what? I'm done. Yeah, I don't think that he's still going to be on this whole hero thing of like, if anything, I do think that he might want to take his revenge just on the front man. But in terms of like the objective of wanting to dismantle the games and all of that stuff, I think he's going to be like, I'm done. I've already lost so much. I mean, the second season ends with his childhood friend being killed right in front of him. And I think he's just going to get to a point where he's like, at what cost am I trying to dismantle this thing that is so much bigger than me? And also, at what cost am I trying to dismantle something that is made up of so many people in addition to me? And I think he's just going to get to the realization that, like, it might be arrogant to think that I can dismantle this thing by myself. So
I think, I would say it was less arrogance, but maybe in season 2 he went back into the games a little bit naive.
Yeah, definitely.
To who people are, and also when you put people under strenuous conditions, you really are not sure. Or a person may be a good person, but once they are put in a testing situation, they may go against what is perceived as the goodness of human nature.
True.
And so he I think in season 3, he will be a lot less naive, but a lot more aware to just how flawed people are.
Yeah.
And he probably won't move with the intention, like you said, based off of that, of wanting to free people.
Yeah.
Or free as many people, or making sure that no one leaves the game dead.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if he'll completely be like, you know what, screw all of you and screw this.
Yeah, he's too much of a sweetheart as well. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, if I was in that game and I won the monies that I won, I wouldn't have gone back to try to change things.
I wouldn't have been. Sing your show now.
For what? I keep it moving. I take my money. I go to all the therapy I need, all of the retreats and stuff, work through the trauma.
After
and I go live my best life.
After what I have just witnessed.
Do you know what I mean? Now I must voluntarily go back in there.
And there's a probability for me to die. To save people who are definitely not wanting to be saved.
True. And also, like, your kid, bro. Your kid. And I guess, again, it goes back to the nature of, like, individual versus the greater good. But, like, your child.
A child.
So,
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
You also touched on the ending of his best friend dying.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were unhappy about.
Why though? What did they think was gonna happen?
A lot of people were unhappy because they just said that ending was not what they expected.
What did they expect?
I definitely knew he was not gonna die.
Yeah, he can't die. That's gonna be in season 3. So
maybe exposure.
As in for him to be exposed to the fact that the front man is actually the guy that he was playing with. That's why the season 3, they couldn't have explored all of that, because then what's the need for season 3?
But what do you guys think should have been a better ending?
Actually, yeah, let us know.
Drop it in the comments.
I personally think that the ending was what the ending should have been. Were you satisfied with the ending?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I was not satisfied. It was a bit heart-wrenching, like seeing your friend. That just sounds sarcastic.
No! I'm not even being sarcastic. I just didn't think that that's where you were going with it. But
yes,
it was gut-wrenching.
It was sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad.
So I think that was, I think that was what maybe people found it underwhelming.
Fair. Okay, I can accept that.
I think maybe part of the excitement maybe in the ending of season 1 was knowing that obviously there's going to be, like, he's coming back to the game, so there'll be a season 2. I'm just not sure how else it could have ended, really.
I agree.
Maybe there was a part in people that were hoping for victory, a win.
Like a good end to the story.
Somewhat.
But what happens in season 3 then? Then we can just cap it at season 2.
I guess that's why. I guess that's why it needed to end the way that it ended.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you guys think in terms of how it should have ended. And yeah, that brings us to the end of our episode.
Yes.
Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our socials, especially YouTube, guys.
Subscribe.
Go on YouTube and watch the full review. Don't just focus on the shorts,
and
please.
Subscribe, please.
There's some really good content and thinking and analysis here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Share the channel. You can find us on Did You See That Pod, and on TikTok as well.
Yeah. And please do let us know in the comments what shows, books,
you'd like us to
movies that you would like us to review.
Thanks, guys.
Catch you later.